Blanche. Amityville is a beautiful place to live, and by the way, that's Paul in the carriage. I'm writing you this postcard hoping that you will visit soon. Your sister, Grace.
Amityville's friendly Bay Village theme can still be seen today because of one reason. People care. We are very fortunate to still have most of our history untouched. From the early days of the Gothic and Victorian eras to Federal-style colonials, Amityville's charming village homes have been lovingly restored by their current owners. These people take great pride in doing so. These photographs not only document our rich history, but they also represent a window in time, a view of Amityville, past and present.
The year is 1904, and ambling through the village is Charles Delano, the publisher and owner of the new newspaper in town, the Amityville Record. The means of production at the time were crude and laborious by today's standards. There were no computers, and Charles Delano carried heavy pages with handset type on the train to a printer in another town. His arms constantly bore the painful reminders of the hot lead that spattered through his sleeves as he worked to produce the paper each week.
I'd like to thank the Amityville Record for the opportunity to say a few words about their 100th anniversary. Many years ago I did have an ownership in it, and I'm happy to see the way both Al and Karen are taking care of the paper. They've asked me to say a few words of some of the things that we did while we were the mayor, and there were two areas that I really like to think back on. One, so many of you will notice, were the trees that we put in the village, and at that time I had run as an independent, and there was a little controversy on the board about opening the sidewalks. So I took a page in the Amityville Record and said that for $100 I'd open the sidewalk, put a tree in, and put a plaque in memory of your brother, sister, father, or whatever. And within a week we were fully subscribed. That's how the trees got in the village, and that was some 40 years ago. The other thing that I'm very proud of is that the railroad elevation came in my tenure, and I used to have what we'd call a Saturday morning seminar where we let people come in and tell whatever they had on their mind. We parked a donut truck outside of this building here, and they had coffee and they brought it up. And one of the problems I was upset about was that they were going to put a Chinese wall, and if you look at where the village starts, to the west at County Line Road, there is a wall, and then where the village ends, there was a wall. And so we got this dirt embankment out, and at the seminar, I brought this up, and the village fathers and many other persons in the village went to Albany, and we were able to get the embankment out, and as you see now, you have parking all the way through. So it's been 40 years, it's a great village, I've lived here all my life, and I'm just flattered to be called upon to say a few words. I want to thank you very much. God bless you.
The Amityville Record began in an era when the idea of satellites circling the Earth, man landing on the moon, and instant worldwide communication were the subject only of comic books and science fiction writers. As the first edition of the paper rolled off the presses, a century of changes loomed ahead. Over the decades to follow, the Record was there to document that history as it unfolded in a place called Amityville.
So if we can get that in, unless you need to open it.
Okay, we'll keep it at 16 then.
All right. Do you anticipate any additional ads coming in on Monday?
Well, my normal real estate ads will be coming in, but that'll be all be dummied in anyway.
Maybe build in a few house ads so we can accommodate anyone that
Sure.
has to
We can work
get
it
an
that
ad
way.
in this week.
Okay.
One of the wonderful things that you have is a storehouse of memories about Jessie and Walter Gunnison, who were the founders. Jessie was the founder's daughter.
Yes, exactly.
Charles Delano's daughter.
Charles Delano, and they lived 2 doors away from the Record. Yes, and Jessie Gunnison, Jessie Delano married Walter Gunnison. He had been a reporter for the Brooklyn Eagle, which was quite a paper in its day. And they lived 2 doors away in the Delano home, 2 doors away from the Record.
What street was that?
Green Avenue.
Green Avenue.
There's a parking lot there now behind Chase Bank and between Chase Bank and the firehouse, the police station.
One of the most intriguing stories that I heard was one about the Amityville Record and it's being found in a rather unusual place. That was a favorite of Jessie's. Maybe you can repeat that.
That was
for
a
us.
Jessie story. She was so forthcoming when I came in the front door and she was about to go out the back, turning over the reins of the paper that had been in her family since the turn of the century. And she couldn't have been nicer, nor her husband Walter. They were just wonderful to me, sharing everything. But one of the stories that she told was that some 10 years before, this would have been in the 60s, I guess, there was an Amityville native who was taking quite an extensive tour of Africa. And he wanted to do this so that he had no agenda. And he would stop in the village and maybe try something that they ate and do that for a while. Then he would move on and he would hike in the jungle and so forth. And in hiking in the jungle, he ran across an abandoned hut. And he couldn't resist going in and rummaging around. There was nothing there, he thought, but he just wondered what it would look like, an abandoned hut in the middle of a jungle in Africa. And there, when he moved certain debris around, was a trunk. It was ravaged and falling apart, but it was intact. And he pried open the top of the thing, and there was only one item in the trunk, and it was a copy of the Amityville Record.
That's unbelievable.
She loved that story.
Any notion of how it got there? Or
No idea,
whatsoever.
because there was nobody there. All the murderers of the Amityville Horror. And he got on the phone and called me. I was home having dinner, and he called me and told me what had happened, because he thought it was too big a story to let it just evaporate or go to a larger newspaper.
Right.
And so I called in all my people. One of them went to the horror house, another went to the police station, and I remained at the Record. I was Command Central. And do you know, with all the coverage, and we had the most exclusive coverage of all, because we had the ear of everyone involved.
Very typical of a weekly.
Oh, yes. I could get them to talk to me, and they wouldn't talk to others. We did not win one award from the New York State Press Association for that coverage. It was absolutely beautiful coverage. Pictures, and we had tons of pictures.
I had never really covered a village in such close detail as I had covered the town prior to that. And I remember going to the board meetings, and the public officials would refer to locations by the name of the person who owned them instead of by address. And it was Mrs. Houseworth's property or Mr. Brown's house. And it was terribly frustrating because I had to then go and find out which properties they were talking about.
I have lived since 1972 in the Grease home.
That's the way it is.
Not the
now.
Temple home, the Grease home.
Well, first, I would like to congratulate the Amityville Record on 100 years of tremendous reporting and following the history of the village. 100 years is a long time. It's a full century, and my congratulations to Alan, Carol, and James. My administration has been in office for the last 7 years, and we've been able to accomplish things that we never thought possible. We've been able to accomplish things that we promised, but things such as taking down the Colonial Motel and establishing a 9/11 memorial, things such as getting rid of the tenement buildings in Crest Canvas on the corner of Ocean and Merrick, and creating a nautical park with the help of Suffolk County financing has been beyond our dreams, and we're just thrilled that we're able to accomplish these things. Some of the normal things that we promised and we were able to do is establishing a website, entranceways to the village, and work on improving this building, the Village Hall, and creating a new municipal lot next door. So these are some of the things that we've been very proud and been able to do for the residents. As for myself, I'm thrilled to be able to serve the village that I grew up in, that my grandparents and my parents and my great-grandparents grew up in, and it's just been an honor and a privilege for me. Here we are at Umpqua Point Place, a park that has been recently acquired by the Suffolk County Real Estate Division for the village of Amityville. Just last week I was here with County Executive Levy in a joint dedication ceremony in the honor of Maxine Postal, the presiding officer of the Suffolk County Legislature, who worked so hard to acquire this property for the village and the Suffolk County residents. We're thrilled to have one of the last pristine parcels on the South Coast preserved for history, and certainly one of the last parcels in western Suffolk. We plan on building a walking exercise path around the park, and we'll have a kayak launching pad to the northern part of the park to qualify in active recreations. So we're thrilled that this park is available for the residents of the village and all the Suffolk residents, and can't wait to get busy on it and make it useful and available, ready to use.
Hello, my name is Joe Gadis. I am a current resident of Amityville at present. I was a past president of the Amityville Historical Society and currently the first vice president. I'd like to take some time to tell you about a wonderful place, Ireland's Mill. That site has been in existence since the 1750s and was bought by Thomas Ireland in 1793. It operated as a family business till 1915, when it was ordered torn down by Mrs. John Edward Ireland. There was a sawmill, a grist mill, a bakery, and a tavern on this site. The original parcel of land was over 60 acres extending north and south of the Merrick Road. There was also an ice house on the pond, where ice was harvested and stored for the hot summer months. The ice was insulated and stored with salt hay around it, which was a great source of insulator and was also plentiful on the bay. Salt hay was one of the reasons the early settlers attracted to Amityville. It was a little incidental. There was a story that was said that there was a whistle that would blow, letting everyone know when the ice house was filled. Think how wonderful that must have been, knowing when that whistle blew there was plenty of ice for the summer months. I hardly know how to describe the vast changes that have taken place on this most peaceful and beautiful site. The original pond, now Avon Lake, was much larger in size and was dredged in the late 1920s. Originally from the north, veering south, there were two mill races, one to the east and one to the west, forming a sort of V, which veered south, and the water drained into the Amityville Creek under the Merrick Road. The Little Pond, as we know it today, was formed when John E. Ireland had a swampland between the two races dredged. When you gaze upon that wonderful serene pond with all of its nature about you, you can still hear all of the echoes of its rich past.
Welcome to the Lauder Museum. This building was built in 1909 by Augustus Pearsall for the Bank of Amityville. Over the years, the bank had a number of mergers, and in the 1960s it became the Franklin National Bank. When the Franklin National Bank wanted to build a new structure, they presented this building to the Amityville Historical Society. The Amityville Historical Society has approximately 7,000 artifacts in its collection. Many of these are on exhibit in the museum. Some of the exhibits are permanent exhibits, and then there are others which change about every 6 months. The museum is open to the public 3 days a week, Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays from 2 to 4 p.m. In addition to the regular visiting hours, the museum is available for special tours. Many of the local school children come with their teachers to visit the museum and to see special programs. One of the sections of the museum is the Salte gift shop. The gift shop features many articles which people may purchase as souvenirs of the Amityville area.
Congratulations to Carolyn and Al James on the 100th anniversary of the Amityville Record. This local paper has always played an integral part in the Amityville community. From its founder, Charles Delano, the owners, Jesse and Walter Gunnison, to Lou Howard and now Carolyn and Al James, the paper reported the news of the community for the people in the community. I had met with Walter Gunnison on his porch, which is right across the street from Village Hall, to discuss any entrances into the political arena. If you passed Walter's test, you could be assured that he would be fair and forthright with you in your coverage during your run for election. This is an honor for me to take part in the Amityville Record's 100th anniversary, since they did such a great job for me when I was mayor of the village of Amityville, celebrating Amityville's 100th anniversary. This year, the 100th anniversary of the Amityville Record will also be remembered by all, since the paper has always been and is today a cornerstone of our community. To all of the owners, editors, writers, both past and present, I congratulate you. It is an honor and a pleasure that Carolyn and Al James have asked me to be part of this celebration. Congratulations, best of luck, and many more years of outstanding reporting.
Hello, my name is Larry Basil. I'm a current Amityville resident and presently also the president of the Amityville Historical Society here at the Lauder Museum. I'd like to discuss a little bit with you in reference to the transportation section of Amityville. A look back over 100 years of Amityville transportation. As we have witnessed so far, there have been many changes in Amityville transportation since the founding of the record in 1904. Of course, the modes of transportation throughout our village have changed also. At the beginning of the 20th century, the most popular conveyance was either walking or by some type of horse-drawn vehicle. During the early years of the record, Amityville was as much of Long Island a farming community, of course outside of the village proper. A cross-island trolley was established in 1909. This electric-powered line ran right down Broadway, ending at the Ocean Avenue dock. Amityville grew not only from a small farming and bayfront community, but from a summering to a year-round bedroom community of New York. Many local businesses thrived from this growth, and transportation was definitely the key. To get to the Atlantic Ocean, there were many steam-powered, gasoline-powered ferries navigating the Amityville Creek through the Great South Bay over to our South Shore. The Adele, the Atlantic, and the Columbia, to name a few of the ferries. People had more time for recreation, and it was reflected in their preferred mode of transportation. The grand hotels that were located at the southern end of Grand Central Avenue featured horseback riding, bicycling, and sailboat racing. An Amityville shipbuilding family, the Ketchums, were well known for their famous skiffs, the Seaford and the Narrascatuck. With the growth came invention. We have become, over the second half of the 20th century and into the new millennium, a society dependent upon automobile for our preferred method of transportation. Many visitors to Amityville, whose destination was to spend a day at the seashore enjoying the surf and hospitality of Van Nostrand's pavilion, would have used Powell's livery, at least as far as the Amityville Creek, as it affectionately is known today by our locals. One of Amityville's first growth spurts, if you will, was experienced from the 1890s through the 1920s. We went from a small farming and bay village to a summertime vacation resort. This period of growth and change also brought new types of transportation. Although the South Side Railroad, now the MTA's Long Island Railroad, came through Amityville in 1867, the cargo to and from New York City had changed from freight and goods to mostly passengers. One only had to wander up to the nearby Amityville train station, as is the case today, to witness the population of Amityville on the move.
NASEC, North Amityville Community Economic Council. Has been here for about 20 years now, and we're the group that's responsible for the redevelopment of the corner, the infamous corner. Inside this building, we teach computer skills, office techniques. We teach English as a first language, and we teach GED. So we have a lot of training here in nurses' assistants, and we've graduated a ton of people out of these programs.
I'm Rosemary Deering, and I'm the Executive Director of the North Amityville Community Economic Council. We provide vocational training here, and we're also involved with economic development here in North Amityville.
This is the site of the original Bethel AME Church, which is located right next to Northeast School, which was picketed to make the schools integrate with the Princeton plan. As you can see by this sign, the church remains that you just looked at was built in 1815. This is the new church after that one burned down, and this was dedicated in 1967. So this is the original burial sites in the community, and it's been preserved, and I think it's been made into one of the land preservation. This is the Brewster Burial Grounds, one of the older families in this community. And you can see that it's circa 1800 to 1873, and Native American families are still in the community, and Civil War veterans. This is the Bunn's burial ground right across from the Brewsters. Bunn is another old name in the community. It's been around and quite familiar to the people that live here, especially the older folks.
My name is Richard Handler. I'm a proud resident of our village and someone that's had the pleasure of speaking to lots of the old timers and new timers to learn lots of interesting stories about our town. One that I've done a little research on, and one which is quite a thrill, frankly, is the Triangle Building. You know, any week you open up the Amityville Record, and one is always going to see a picture of the triangle. It's the major focus point in town. It's the village green. It's the town square. And one wonders about all the great events that occurred there. But one of great significance is the founding of Jones Beach and the Ocean Parkway. There was a very well-established, well-recognized giant of a legal figure that lived in Amityville, a fellow named Samuel Hildreth. Hildreth, of course, is the namesake of Hildreth Court, which is just south of Montauk Highway. Well, of course, in a neighboring village, a very important personage, the state parks director and someone who was developing a mammoth project called Jones Beach, had gotten in touch with him. Of course, you know the name Robert Moses. And Moses was looking for a way to connect what was Jones Beach over to the Fire Island Inlet. Robert Moses made an appointment with Samuel Hildreth, and they met in Hildreth's office at the second floor of the Triangle Building. You have to imagine this in the early 1920s or the late teens. And Hildreth said to Moses, well, if you want to bring down the Town of Babylon Town Board and get a parkway built between Jones Beach, where the Needle is at the west, and Fire Island, then you've got to get the town board to approve it. And one way to do it is to hurt the town board in their pocketbook, which is the development of fishing licenses. Well, what happened, of course, is that every Town of Babylon fisherman who applied to the State Parks Department for a license was summarily denied, and for 2 or 3 seasons the Town of Babylon fishermen, Amityville fishermen, Lindenhurst, Copeg, Babylon, nobody can go out in the waters and earn a living. And finally, after 2 or 3 years of finding reasons to deny those fishing licenses to the Babylon residents, and with the surrounding town of Islip and town of Hempstead fishermen coming into the local catch, finally the town board fell to its knees, granted the permit to build the Ocean Parkway from the Hempstead area where West End 1, West End 2 is, all the way to the Fire Island area. And that is how Ocean Parkway was built and how the Jones Beach project was completed. And one has to wonder, that dark, stormy night, or whatever the weather may have been up on the second floor of the Triangle building, that's the place, through Hildreth's guidance, that gave birth to what is probably one of the foremost recreational areas in the world.
As the Amityville Record quietly turns 100, it is evident in the changes made in our village through time. But the glorious sounds of yesterday echo in the bells of the Old South Church.
There was a group of folks who would come in here who would do 7 o'clock service and then leave to go out on their fishing boats and go fishing. We still have an early morning service, which we don't have lots of fishermen anymore.
The Methodists of the original town of Babylon got together and decided that they needed local churches in local areas. The original church was located just west of Broadway, and that burnt down, and then in 1823, this particular building at 50 Broadway was moved from its site on then Montauk Highway up to the west side, the east side of Broadway, essentially opposite the Cedar Street, just south of where Nostra and Martin is today. That remained the Huntington West Neck Methodist Episcopal Church, while the new church, which is currently in its present location, was completed in 1850, now known as the First Methodist Church. And then this building was moved across the street to its present location in 1848, where it remains, and it was Victorianized around 1880 or so in order to modernize it. Of course, the front porch added on, giving its character as a residence, where it became the pastor's home. So it's quite a thing to, in your mind's eye, to take down the veranda, look at the double front doors, and realize that at one time that was the entrance for parishioners to come in and worship. And to think that this building housed Revolutionary War heroes, people of the day. At the time this was built in 1823, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were still alive. So there's quite a history, and is a good example of Amityville past to present. end of Ocean Avenue is a placard for Lawrence Sperry, the famed aeronautics engineer who's responsible for building the first guided missile, which was ignited from the foot of Ocean Avenue, Richmond Avenue, to a predetermined site. And the history and the position of Amityville being in the cradle of aviation from that moment forward continued to very lofty positions, just as high as that guided missile might be. So how many communities can boast of a direct connection by its favorite sons, of having a creator of the guided missile going to a creator of the lunar module all the way to a commander of the space shuttle? And that's quite an honor for our community. And by the way, Kevin Kriegel and his face have donned the Amityville Record on several occasions, and as well as Mr. Carby's participation in the lunar module project. leafing through the record would be literally pages in history of seeing those names from yesteryear that we and certainly our parents and grandparents well recall.